Hi everyone, my name is Fredrik and I have a confession to make. For the last 3 years I've been in a very complicated relation. I met her at my current work and it was love at first sight. She talked about agility, she talked about artificial intelligence, she talked about scaling up agility. She was exactly what I needed. But as with all relationships, me and Safe have had our ups and downs. Sometimes I believe that Safe is from Venus and I'm from Mars. But let's talk a little bit about her. If you wonder about the pictures of the Barbie, it's because Barbie always tries to be current and up-to-date and perfect. And I think it's the same thing with Safe. Safe always tries to be current and up-to-date as well. Barbie is also a subject of some talk, and it's a little bit controversial. It's the same thing with Safe. Therefore, all the pictures of Barbie here. Now, Safe combines a lot of yummy, good ingredients into a recipe for how big companies can become successful and more agile. And this is what's so tempting for the big dinosaur companies, because they also want to be as nimble and light-footed as the gazelle companies in order to not be overrun and become extinct. So Safe has ambition to help companies to become more successful. Now the question is, if you follow the recipe, will you be successful? I do believe that even if you follow a recipe, you need to understand the ingredients. Let's say you're making an apple pie. If you can't tell a bad apple from a good apple, it doesn't matter how well you follow the recipe. You need to understand the ingredients in order to be successful. Now, before we move on and talk more about this, let me introduce DevOps. I'm sure most of you know her already, but she has been a great help for me with our implementation of Safe. I like how they describe her in the DevOps handbook. It's all about flow, getting work flowing as fast as possible throughout your processes or value chain. And then it's about getting feedback, doing something about the feedback, acting upon it. And from this feedback, you can continuously learn how to prevent things or keep doing things in order to become better all the time. Now, value streams are the steps or the activities that you need to do to take something from A to B. And the fear of constraint is about finding the current worst bottleneck or constraint, and then you remove it. And then as you remove constraints, the flow throughout the process, the value stream will become better. System thinking is about trying to understand the entire system, the whole system, and not just a part of the system, in order to understand how the different parts of the system actually affect each other. Because otherwise you might be sub-optimizing. Now, we will look at Safe from a DevOps perspective and also from the Cynefin perspective. The Cynefin framework was discovered or invented by Mr. Snowden, and it's a strategy for how to solve problems. And you need to approach a problem with the right tool, because otherwise it might be like trying to nail down a screw with a hammer, or the other way around. If you look at the complicated domain, that is where we have some causality. There is a cause and effect, but it might be hard to find out. So you need some expertise in the subject in order to understand it. But if you can do some analysis, then you can see the pattern based on how you solved this problem before. And then based upon this, you can actually figure out how to solve the problem. And then you can make a plan, and you follow the plan, and you can move on. Now, in the complex domain, there is more randomness. Doing the same thing twice might actually give a completely different result. So then we need to more of sense First we probe, we try some things, and then we sense what the right solution is, and then we respond to that. It's a little bit like how we do software. We ask a user, what functionality do you want to have? And then they say, we want this and this, and then they implement it, and then they say, we want something else. And then you have to go through this iteration a few times in order to find a product that is acceptable to the end user. I like to say that, you know, no software design survives the first contact with a user, basically. Now, if we try to put this into practice in order to make it more understandable, imagine that this is John. He has a team. He also has a problem. He has way too many Barbie t-shirts that he needs to sell, and he doesn't know how to get rid of them. So he goes to his team and he tells the team, hey team, I need some help in order to sell the Barbie t-shirts. And they say, okay, let us probe the market. Let us try 3 different things. Let's put a big ad on the page in order to see if that increases sales or changes user behavior. Let's put a 25% discount and a 50% discount to different segments. And John says, fine, that's great, let's do it. So they make some changes, they press a magic button, and whoosh, it goes through the pipeline and is out in production. And as it is out in production, they can more or less in real time on their monitors see how the metrics change, what happens. And then they can see that, well, an ad does nothing, but interestingly enough, both a 25% discount and a 50% discount increase sales by, say, 25%. So they probe the market. Now they sense that the right approach is to have a discount of 25%. So actually what they do then is they roll this out to the entire customer segment. They press a magic button, and it's up and out in production again. So now, of course, this is not about selling Barbie t-shirts. This is about how we can use the probe, sense, respond to approach a problem, which is then selling t-shirts. We can also see some good DevOps practices here. There was a good flow throughout the process without anything blocking or stopping. The team could take care of the entire value chain from end to start, or start to end. They got feedback, and they continuously learn what was the right approach here. Now, I'm going to tell a story about John very soon, but let me put in a disclaimer here. I will share some of the experiences we have had with SAFE for the last 3 years, and sometimes we have done things differently than what SAFE intended. And I'm not here to explain how SAFE should work in theory. I'm here to discuss how we use it in practice with all the failures that we have done and how we try to succeed despite this. And hopefully some of it will be useful. And also I want to be clear that my intention is not to discredit SAFE. I believe SAFE is just a framework as any other framework. What actually creates success is teams working together, collaborating, and then it doesn't matter which framework you use. And my passion and what I'm passionate about is trying to make things better, trying to figure out how we can work together to get things better. And that sometimes means not doing what SAFE tells you to do. Now, today we will focus on the PI planning. And PI planning, PI stands for either program increment or planning interval, depending upon which version of SAFE that you use. And we're going to focus on that. And the reason for that is because Leffingwell, who created SAFE, said, if you're not doing PI planning, you're not doing SAFE. And this is going to be a little bit of a storytelling session. And as such, we had a survey outside where to tell a story, you need a storytelling hat. So you had to vote, and you voted that I should have this cat hat on me while wearing my story. So this was the winner. This is going to be quite hot. I'm happy that you didn't pick at least the pig with the flying wings, because that would have been silly. This is the book of John. So I'm going to read you a story. Now, on the picture, you can see John. John was excited to have started a new work in a new organization that had recently adopted SAFe. John had worked with a number of frameworks previously, but never SAFe. So he was excited to see how will it be to work with SAFe in practice. He had already received his invitation to his first PI planning, a 2-day event which was quite planned. Now, John, he walks into a big room full of 100 people. There are teams sitting around tables, there are post-its on the tables, there are notebooks, there are Kanbans, and on the wall is a big program board. The program board contains all the features, the user stories, the team names, and there is a lot of red yarn zigzagging across the stories that shows the dependencies. Silence enters the scene as the release-trained engineers takes the stage and introduces the product managers and the business owners. They tell all the teams what are the most important features and user stories to work on for the next 3 months, what they have to commit to, what they have to deliver. After that, there's a lot of buzz in the room as the teams take all the features, they break it down into user stories, and they estimate what capacity they have, how much they can do, and they make estimates on the stories. Now, John can't help but notice that the approach that is being used seems to be quite planned. It also seems like you can know the result in advance because you do the capacity planning and you do the estimates, which is great in a world where you have a lot of stability, where you have no surprises, and where you have little variation. That is, you use the sense, analyze, respond approach to solve problems. Now, on the team level, the teams use Scrum. Scrum, on the other hand, that's a framework designed to solve complex problems. We're supposed to experiment, we're supposed to get feedback, and based upon the feedback, you make new choices. John was a little bit concerned, thinking, could this be a problem? Is there a conflict between having one approach on the governance level and another approach at the team level? What do you think? Could there be a conflict? How many have worked with SAFe here? Okay, cool. Most of you. You might recognize some of these things. So, after completing the PI planning, it was time to get some things done, and everyone was looking forward to synchronously deliver some of the features that was decided in the PI planning. However, as time passed, John became a little bit concerned that the approach using the sense, analyze, respond made the teams focus too much on what to deliver, what they had promised to deliver. And John grew a little bit concerned that maybe this approach will make the teams a little bit flexible. Maybe they will not respond to changes as much as we want to. A few days into the sprint, a big business case lands on John's desk with a big boom, it says. It's an urgent business case that needs to be handled immediately. So John goes away to a team and he tells the team, hey, how can we handle this business case? It's urgent, we need to do something about it. But the team looked at John like he was stupid and said, what are you talking about? We made our commitments. We promised what we would deliver for the next 3 months. Now, if you want to change something, then you better talk to the product managers. So John went away to the product managers and talked to them, and they looked at him like he was stupid and said, do you have any idea of how much time we put into the plans of this, of synchronizing between the teams, of finding the dependencies and making sure that things will be done in the right order? It would be very messy to change this. Now, if you want this changed, you better talk to the business owner. So John went away and talked to the business owners. And they told John that, well, we see where you're coming from, but the features that we do, they actually affect teams in other trains as well. So if we want to make a change, then we better coordinate that and sync that with the other trains. And that would be very messy. In addition, we sent all the plans and the roadmaps up to the highest management, and they approved the plans. So if you want any change, you need to talk to the solution business owner. Now, so John went away and talked to the solution business owner, who said, I do understand what you're saying, but we have a time window for the business cases. And in this case, it was missed by a week. So any new business cases have to be submitted for the next PI, which is in 3 months. It all ended with lots of escalations and lot of problems and product managers talking with angry stakeholders, etc. A lot of time wasted. There was even, a grumpy manager who said, well, wasn't this supposed to make us, not plan so much and being able to respond to change? And in the second sprint, things started to go a little bit off the rails. Because the teams, they were facing unexpected delays due to unplanned work in the form of bugs or technical updates, surprises, waiting for someone else, and so on. Meaning that the user stories were not done in time. Now, the stakeholders, they got angry and said, where is my promised functionality? Where is it? You promised you would deliver on time. You committed to it. The poor product managers, they tried to solve this in the best way they knew. They tried to say, maybe you don't need all the user stories. Maybe we can change the scope. Maybe we can change the contract. Meanwhile, the Scrum Masters, they began to look into the SAFe manuals to see, is there something we misunderstood? Maybe there is some process we didn't understand. Maybe there is some tool like the WSGF that we could use instead. But John, he was thinking for himself, there's a problem with this. He was thinking of individual interactions over processes and tools, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. So John, he faces contract negotiations, angry stakeholders, unplanned work, and prioritization issues. What should he do? What can he do? John realized that the sense, analyze, respond approach made the teams reluctant to respond to changes because they were focusing on what to deliver when. They put a lot of efforts into their plans. They promised. They did not want to change their plans because they made a lot of effort. And John thought back of the teams selling the Barbie t-shirts. They were able to respond to change quite quickly. They tried things. They experimented, tried new hypotheses. He said, it's almost like that team was playing a game of chess. They made one move, and then they waited for the opponent to make a counter move. And based upon that, they reacted to the move. Now, the way we do it in SAFe, in our PI planning, it's like we decide our 20 next moves, and then we stick to them, no matter what moves the other opponent makes. He said, if we want to respond fast, then maybe we should not make detailed plans. Because we need to allow for the teams to respond to feedback or unplanned work. And in order to deal with unexpected, we cannot make detailed plans, but if we don't have detailed plans, we need to know where we're going, because if we have a plan, but we don't know where we're going, we'll always follow the plan, then the plan becomes the goal. But if we instead know the intention, if we know where we're going, then we can actually formulate goals differently based upon the result that we wish to have. And then we can shift our focus. So instead of setting a goal where we say we should deliver a new function where users can get discount, where we already assume that we know what the right solution is from the beginning, locking us into a mindset of no response, no change, we should actually set goals based upon the result that we wish to have. For example, we want to increase sales by 20% in 3 months. The difference here is that in the second goal, we say we know what the result is that we want to achieve, but we're not sure of how to get there. Right? And we should set the goals before the PI planning, not after we have committed to what to deliver. John talked to the teams and they decided, why don't we try some objective key results instead? A few sprints later, the Scrum Master, Ted, now feeling really silly here, came and he talked to John and he said, you know, John, I never thought that making these changes would make a big difference, but they do. Focusing on goals have changed the way we work, focus on results. Previously, when the team committed to user stories, each developer worked on their own separate user story, and then they handed it over to the tester. But now, when we have a common sprint goal instead, we work together towards a common goal. We succeed or we fail together. And another strange thing is, previously, the daily meeting was more about answering 3 questions. It was like a status meeting. But now it's more about planning. How can we get closer to the sprint goal instead? So we started collaborating much better and talking to each other and working together in a different way. Oops, poor Ted. So a little bit, having a result-based goal helped the teams to experiment and learn. And as they learned, they could actually continuously respond to changes to bring forward the desired result. Now, during the PI planning, the teams, they wanted to be really efficient and they wanted to deliver as much value as possible. They made their utmost to fill their backlog to 100% of the capacity. Some team even said, why don't we take some more uncommitted work or some, as it was called in the previous versions of SAVE, some stretch goals to show how good we are. But the team soon discovered that there were a lot of unplanned work coming in, again in the form of things they had not thought of, or bugs, or changed requirements, and so on. And when that happened, they couldn't take care of it because the glass was full. It was not possible to fill the glass with more water or more lemon juice or whatever. In order to take on more work, something else had to be removed. And this caused a lot of work for the product owners, for the product managers, and so on, because they constantly had to renegotiate the scope with stakeholders. In addition, the teams felt very stressed because they felt we're always behind. We're never managing to get, ahead of our work. The second problem was the issue with normalized estimates. SAFE recommended using story points, where 1 user story point equals 1 day of uninterrupted work, and the teams planned like that. For example, there was a feature, and it had been estimated to 20 story points. So in the plan, it was written in 20 days for it to be completed. In reality, it took 60 days. Now, they couldn't figure out why. Everyone was quite surprised. And the team said, well, But I do believe our estimates were correct. We put 20 working days on it. When they did some more investigation, they could see that the feature had been split into 3 user stories. The first 2 user stories were done by Team Alpha in the first sprint, but the third one could only be done by Team Bravo. And Team Bravo was really busy and had a lot of other important things to do, meaning they could not start working on this user story until sprint 3. So no one worked on it in sprint 2. Thence, it took almost 60 calendar days, even though the estimate was correct. So that meant there were some factors that were not considered when doing the estimates. So the situation posed a challenge for the product owners, the business owners, and the teams. And, the stakeholders said, how can you be so bad at doing estimates? It's like the factor of P. I guess some of you do recognize these issues. So what can we do about it? John stumbled upon a book called The Phoenix Project. Reading the book, John realized that filling a backlog to 100% is the same thing as having 100% resource utilization. And that works well if you have a perfect world where there are no surprises, we have perfect estimates, we have no variation. But in all other cases, there was even a mathematical formula showing that if you have a resource utilization about 80%, you will get queues and you will get handovers as soon as something unplanned happens. So the Scrum Masters talked and they decided, okay, let's try something different. Let's plan our first sprint to only have 80% capacity, the second sprint 60% capacity, and the third sprint 50%. The reason to lower the number is because the further in the future we are, the more uncertain we are of how much work there will be, or unplanned work, or priority changes, and so on. It's a little bit like predicting the weather. You can make a forecast. The forecast for tomorrow would be great. 10 days ahead, it's not so certain anymore. The approach actually did help the teams, because suddenly they could take on some unplanned work. They could handle when there was a new story coming in, because they had a little bit more space. The glass was not full. This made life easier for the product owners, who could focus more on other things than talking and renegotiating all the time. The teams could work in a more sustainable pace. And strangely enough, the stakeholders were also more happy, because they got what they expected. So the expectation management also became better. All in all, planning for less actually made the flow better and made the teams be able to deliver more. And then John thought, what about the estimates? Well, why don't we just kick the estimates out of here? Let's stop using estimates, because if we're working towards results and we don't know what user stories or features will actually give us the desired results, why should we even estimate them? But the teams were not really agreeing on this. They said that, well, estimates are actually good for the teams, because then we have a common picture and we have a starting point for a discussion to see what needs to be done for a user story or a feature. But we do agree that the estimate should not be used for any capacity planning or for roadmaps and so on. But there is a problem, the stakeholders, they will always want to know when we can deliver. They're like kids in the car, are we there yet? Are we there yet? So how can we solve that? They all fought for a little while, and then they began to look at the cycle times. How many days does it usually take for something to go from analyzing to done? And then they could see that if they remove the edge cases, in 80% of the time, it took about 60 days to get something into production. And that took into consideration wait time and handovers and other things. So they could actually then tell the teams or the stakeholders, in 80% of the time, this feature will take you 60 days before you have it. Jan talked about this, and you can see there are a number of things we have learned here that affect us. Let me do some system thinking on this, he said. You can say, if we use the sense, analyze, respond, that means we presume we know what features will solve the problems, and that means we focus on the features. That means we can focus on deliver on time. That means we become a feature factory, but oops, then something unplanned happens. And when that happens, we get delays, and we get queues, and we get other things, and that means we get contract negotiation instead of collaboration because of an assumption in the beginning. And what's our normal approach to this? Well, we said, probably we didn't plan enough, maybe we didn't analyze it good enough, so let's do that better, and then we're in a bad spiral. The other thing is, if we do the sense, analyze, respond pattern, that means we do detailed plans and promises because we believe in predictability and no variation, and that means we believe we can 100% resource utilization, but then again, oops, something goes wrong, we get some surprises. And because the glass is full, we can't add anymore, so then we get queues and delays and waiting time. And then we get waste, and we get angry stakeholders and stressed out teams. Now, if we focus on the features, the first question will be, when will we deliver? And then we'll do guesstimates, and we put up a lot of red yarn with the dependencies, the critical path, and so on. And we'll do a feature roadmap. Now, if we do that, we need plans, we need coordination, and we need commitment to deadlines, because otherwise we will not deliver on time, on budget. And then we do definitely not want to have any changes, and we do not wish to respond to that, because we promised and we made plans for it. And that means we don't learn, we don't improve. And that means we just run in the same squirrel wheel all the time. One day, John discovered the team standing in front of the program board looking at all the red yarn. And the teams had struggled with dependencies, because often a team could not finish their feature because they had to wait for another team. That means a lot of unfinished work, and there were handovers. And sometimes, if another team found a bug in the code that the first team had done a sprint ago, that team had to shift their focus, they got interrupted, and then they had to relearn again what they had been working on 3 weeks ago. So all in all, that meant a lot of flow stoppers. There was no flow throughout the process. But as they gathered around the big board with the red yarn, John said, "Are we looking at this the wrong way? Why don't we try to remove the dependencies instead of working around them?" And the team said, "Can we do that?" And Ted said, "Yeah, I think so." "Wow, you're a genius. Let's do that." But sometimes it's easier to say than actually to do. And often it's hard to tell what is causing the delays. What is the problems? Why do we get waste in our process? But one of the team members stumbled up on Popendic's 7 Ways of Software Development. And in there were a lot of these things they could recognize and identify, such as handovers and focus shift and double learning and so on. And by being able to understand what some of the waste is, it's easier to identify them and it's easier to remove. Now, some of these things are easy for the teams to remove, such as building a deployment pipeline, etc. Other things are quite difficult for the teams to fix. For example, you have a large, complex organizational structure with policies and rules. You might have a landscape with lots of interdependent products and architecture and so on. And that's very hard for a team to fix. So the Scrum Master told John, You know, as a manager, you need to fix these issues. You need to make sure that you take the right decisions and help us to get an architecture that can make us work more independently, that can make us as teams more autonomous. You need to help us to be able to handle technical debt. You need to change some of the processes that slow us down in the system. And you also need to make sure that we get a better developer experience. My experience is that most of the time we love to fix today's problems. We love to do the heroics. But most of the time we don't fix the underlying problems in the system. And as a team, it can be very difficult to do that. And that's what managers have to handle. We're getting close to the end here. So it had been almost 2 years now. A lot of things had improved. The teams that were sitting and they had a Swedish fika. They still didn't understand SAFe. The number of concepts and roles and methods in the framework confused them. Someone exclaimed, I worked with Prince2, I worked with Rational Unified Process and other systems, and they are complicated, but SAFe is more mastodontic than anything I've ever seen. There are so many concepts in it. There is Lean. There are hundreds of books written on Lean alone. It's university. There are people studying that for 20 years. The Scrum Guide is only 14 pages, but people debate that endlessly on social medias anyway, and SAFe uses something called Safe Scrum instead. No wonder we're confused. Learning and understanding all the concepts just seemed like an impossibility. Someone exclaimed, you know, it's like I want to do the best cake in the world. I put on all the yummy ingredients that I like. I begin with whipped cream, and then I take strawberries, I put on candy, and then someone recognizes, you know, we need to have something healthy as well. Let's add some spinach and carrots onto it just to make it healthy. And someone else said, yeah, and bacon. Everything tastes better with bacon. And John said, yeah, you're right. You know, it's like SAFe is this carrot, chocolate, cream, cheese, blueberry, lemon, candy, crust, frozen meat cake. It's just too much. So, you have heard the story about John and his experiences with SAFe. Now, I called up John to ask him, so if you could start from scratch, what would be the things that you would change then? And this is what he told me.
Where's this going with Fredrik? Let's hear some things of wisdom to remember. SAFe can be complex, leading to a focus on processes and tools. Instead of asking the question, what does SAFe say? Focus on collaboration, delivery, reflection, and improvement. Don't hesitate to cherry-pick from SAFe. Adopt what works and discard what does not. PA planning can lead to detailed plans and resource maximization. This can cause problems when encountering unplanned work, leading to, for example, contract negotiation. Remember the chessboard? Ensure that you have a result-based goal, because then you can decide the next move based on what feedback you get. Slack is key. Don't fill the glass. Planning around dependencies and constraints can result in waste, such as handovers and queues and half-finished work. Identify and eliminate bottlenecks for better autonomy and workflow. The devil is in the dependencies. Leadership plays a critical role in scaling. Managers have the power to change structure and remove obstacles in a way that teams usually can't. Managers should enable better flow. Often we as managers focus too much on making teams more efficient when delays usually occur because of interruptions in the flow. SAFE can help set a direction for an organization and prioritize program-level initiatives, but it comes in the form of a cost of overhead and planning in 3-month cycles, an implicit hierarchy in the form of many new roles. The 3 ways of DevOps, combined with a theory of constraints and system thinking, can help to remove some constraints in SAFE. May the force be with you.
So what about my relationship with SAFE? Well, we're still friends, but sometimes I think she makes it a little bit too complicated and it causes some problems. Meanwhile, a radical thought formed in John's head. What would happen if we didn't do PI planning at all? That's all from me. If you're interested in reading some of my articles or something, you can find a QR code here. But thank you for visiting and listening to the session.